Hi, welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow. It is time for part 3 of our traditional cuff down heel instructions. Trying to find the right word. It's not just the heel flap. We already did that. Video 1 was the heel flap. That's this part. This is video 2 was the heel turn. Now we're about to do the heel gusset. So I am using Rose City Rollers by Mara Catherine Briner. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. This is intended to assist with that pattern, not to replace it. But it also can be used for a lot of vanilla or other traditional cuff down heels. So what's going to happen in this video is, if you've been following all the instructions on the pattern, we have our original loop up here where my right hand is. We have a needle that's attached to the yarn where my left hand is, and we have this huge chasm between. So how do we start knitting in a circle again? That's the gusset. We are going to pick up stitches along the sides here. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, we want to take this and make it look like this. So what to do? If you have finished your heel turn in the right spot, you have your cute little half circle, and the yarn is over here. And again, like I was mentioning in the introduction, there's a huge gap between stitches being held on needles on either side. So we have to pick up stitches, and this is where all those slip stitches in the heel flap are going to come into play. The first thing we're going to do, it says to knit across the heel flap, placing a marker basically in the middle. I have 20 stitches on my size. Everyone's going to have a different number according to their size. So pay attention to the number that she is telling you to knit. And I have these two guys left over from when I was knitting before. So I'm going to put my one that has the 3. Well, actually, I'll put the one that has the 4 on it, because this is going to be the break eventually between needles 3 and 4. And I'm going to keep knitting across. We could break it onto 2 needles right now, but most patterns will try not to have it be too cumbersome and floppy. It's already cumbersome and floppy enough. All right. I've knit all the way across. And now pick up and knit. And again, this number will change depending on what size you're making. For me, my number is 16. And if we need to check, it's again, when you go to pick up from these slip stitches on the edge, I recommend rolling this out as much as you possibly can to make sure we're getting the edge. If anything, if we go out to the very outside here, going the wrong direction, because picking up is often this way, we want 2 stitches along the edge here, not 2, I say 2 stitches, I mean 2 strands. My words will fail me when I'm doing too much at once. 2 strands that make a V, which is 1 stitch, but all the way on the outside edge as much as possible. It's easy to not roll this out enough and maybe grab here. But can you see that there's another strand out here? So if you need to come in from the outside like this to really understand where your V's are. We don't want anything else. We want as little seam as possible on the inside of this. So I'm probably not going to go under this V that is right up top here, because often that's what you just made. That wasn't the last slip stitch. Underneath it, this guy right here is. I can always go down to the end and count. If anything, I'd rather have extra stitches to pick up in here to close the gap. So I'm not going to get the V that is right underneath my needle right now. I'm going to start picking up with the V one down from that. And if I need to, I'm going to come around from this side to try to see where my V's are. As best I can. I find it helps. Some people can do this with 1 needle. So by that, I mean, they would stick their right needle underneath and wrap around and duck back under. If you haven't picked up stitches before, I just kicked that off, by the way, just to be clear. If you haven't done this before, for pick up and knit, we're going to take our left needle and slide it under that whole V on the edge. That's your pickup. And then treat it like a stitch, like a single stitch, and knit it. Now, the reason I do it that way is it can feel more like a natural knit stitch. I've got a little bit of funkiness in here, which means I might not have slipped a stitch the way I was supposed to. So I'm going to fudge this as best I can. But again, if you want to go in from the outside and find 2 strands, there's 2 strands right there. You could pick it up this way as long as you can make sense of this way is knitting it through the back loop. That can be super confusing. I might have already confused some people. So I'm just trying to grab it from the front so I can go in and knit. Now, some of you might be saying, why are you going under 2 strands? Why not just pick up 1 outside strand? That can be super loose and gappy if you only knit 1 outside. If you go under that whole slip stitch on the edge, the 2 strands, it is much more stable. So that for me is number 3. You could have put a stitch marker here if you want to keep track of your count. Like I have to pick up 16. The other thing is, if you know how many stitches were between this marker and here in the end, just add that onto your final stitch count. I'm at 3, and I'm going to come back over here and grab. I can tell where I've picked up because the loop on my needle goes through this big hole. So I want to try to go to the next stitch, but I want to make sure I just did the thing I told you not to do of coming in too far because the outside strand is right there. Sometimes, depending on the thickness of the yarn, you can see the hole and get to the hole next to it without taking extra strands in. So that's 4. Again, if I need to, I'm going to curl up from the outside, put my thumb there maybe. Here's 5. It's really easy to lose track. This big hole, I want to go here, not there. I could be like, hey, here's a V that's facing me, but nope, there's another strand back in here. I want to get as close to the edge as I can while also getting an extra strand. Let's see, I think that was 6. Yep, I'm on 6. So again, come back in here. If you need to turn it over to see it, look, there's the next one I want to pick up. There's 7. It wants to curl under. So I'm going to try that for the rest of this. There's 8. I can pick it up by doing that. I'm going to flip it over and say, there's 9. Try to keep this in the light too. There's 10. Flip it over. Here's 11. I can start on this side, but I can flip over if I need to. There's 12. Flip it over. There's 13. Not sure. I'm hoping to get all this in the camera. 14. 15. There's 16. Even skipping that first stitch, and I'm coming back in here to make sure I can get this as cleanly as possible. Even skipping that first stitch up here, I still have what might be extra stitches in here, but if I really pull it down, get my tail out of the way, and pull it down, these are really close to each other right now. I've crossed the gap. Now, many patterns, and this one is no exception, wants you to pick up 1 more stitch at the corner between the heel flap and the instep. And the question is where? Something in here might work, but just know anything you pick up in here can potentially pull and leave its own hole. I'm going to try to get under 2 strands and then knit it. 1 strand's probably going to be gappy. Picking something up and twisting it might be gappy. See that? That could be gappy. So that's one way to do it, is find a smaller stitch in there to pick up. Another way could be this strand right in here. I could pick this up from the back, do a make one right, and knit it through the front, and that might give me enough. Again, might be a little gappy. Pick up something in there, whichever way you feel most comfortable. And they'll tell you how many stitches you should have on this needle if you want to check. Now it wants you to knit across the stitches on the next 2 needles, the ones we haven't touched in a while. So I'm going to go ahead and see, this one has my needle 1 marker on it. Again, I always like to have the marker hanging on the opposite side from where the yarn is. The yarn's in back, so the marker's in front. I'm going to knit across needle 1. And before I knit across needle 2, let's go back and take a look at what we did right there. So I've got my heel turn and all these stitches and all these extra stitches up on the needle that are starting the circle. I need to knit across this needle, and then I've got the big gap again, so I'm going to pick up stitches again. So let me come to needle 2. And these guys did a good job. I see a little bit, let's get that out of the way, a little bit of splittiness from when I was back there, knitting in the round. I'm going to knit across this needle. And in some ways, this is going to function in the opposite way of the other one. We picked up stitches and then picked up an extra one in the corner. So here I am. I can't keep knitting because my other loops are way over here. I need to pick up stitches across this. And they want us to use the 2 empty needles. We don't want to pick up and put a stitch on this one because needle 2 is done now. So remember, with this, we can pick up a stitch towards the bottom here, or we can pick up with the strand. I'm going to try lifting a strand and twisting and knitting into it. That may or may not work well to close that gap. I just picked up and twisted and knit a pink strand. So I want to go to the next pink stitch here and get my left needle under both strands of that V so my right needle can knit. And again, if I need to, I'll hold it all out of the way and flip it over so I'm looking at the back side here. We can see them more clearly running up the back edge. I want to get under this bigger looking stitch, the whole V, and knit that. This is the extra stitch I picked up, and I'm going 16 after that. 1, 2, flip it over. I just did the pink, so I'm looking at this purple under the whole V. There's number, whoop, if I can get them right. And this needle being up here is going to get in the way. We're going to try not to focus on him too much. There's 3. Now again, if I pull this, that's the one I just did. And you can see the yarn going into it. Don't think this is the next one. Check that out. Here's my next one. This is the one I just did because there's my yarn. So here's the end one for me to get under 2 strands, under a whole slip stitch V. I'm going to keep doing this all the way up, and I'm going to check my stitch count when I get closer up to the top. Remember, if you can't see that outside V because it's curling under, try flipping over like this to the back side. I'm just rotating ever so slightly so I can see where to go next. And I'm getting close to this needle, so I'm now trying to ignore him. Let me count my stitches. If I count this extra one right here, I should have 17. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. I have 2 more. I still have some space up here, so that's actually really good. Let me see if I can find 2 strands. Some amount of fudging with picking up stitches. So that was 15. I mean, that was 16, right? 17. Now, it might not be perfect, but it's close enough. Then we're also, this part's a little awkward. We're going to knit until this stitch marker here to have these stitches be evenly distributed. They may not want to bend and twist quite as far as you might be comfortable for you, but just do the best you can. There we go. This guy can come off. If we look at this now, and she's got a great drawing in her video. I have it flipped opposite of what she does, but 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you notice, these two needles have a lot more stitches than those two. So we're going to start decreasing these until we have the same number on every needle. These two have a lot more. My pattern says it should be about 27 stitches on each one. And we want to get down to 16 on each one. So we want to get back up to needle 1 is the first thing. We like her pattern. She's like, we could start here, but we're going to go back up. We're going to follow her pattern, and I'm going to knit across this guy. Now this guy is going to be needle 4. So I'm going to put my 4 stitch marker on it as I come up. I'm going to get to the right starting place to follow the Rose City Roller instructions. All right, I am back to needle 1 right now. On this round, we're going to have a decrease round and a set round. On this round, for the top of the foot, which is the 2 needles, 1 and 2, if you're not sure which needles they are, they're the ones that have the fewest number of stitches on them right now. We're just going to knit across the first 2. These are often called the instep stitches. They're the top of your foot. Here's needle 2. All right, now on needles 3 and 4, and I can put my needle 3 marker on, we are going to decrease. So one side we have slip, slip, knit, and the other side we have a knit 2 together, and it makes it look like it decreases down towards the bottom of your foot. So this side is knit 1. I'm going to cinch that up a little bit. I'm going to put my 3 marker back on. And I'm going to do a S, slip knitwise, knit them together. And then I'm going to knit all the way to the bottom of the needle. Now, the 2 decreases for this gusset are going to be at the tops of these needles. So for needle 3, the decrease happens at the start of the needle. We don't do it at the start of needle 4 because needle 4 starts at the bottom of your heel, under your foot. We want these to be mirror images. So we decrease on 3 and go down to the bottom. Now we're starting needle 4. We're going to knit until we're 3 stitches from the end of it. We don't decrease down here. That will not mirror image. That'll put a decrease in that'll put a decrease in the middle of your foot. So we're going to knit up this side until you're 3 stitches from the end. And that's, see, I might have blown right past it. 3 stitches from the end, we're going to knit 2 together and knit the last one. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. The decreases here and here at the higher end, here's the bottom of your heel. At the higher end of these needles, they happen 1 stitch inside the end of the needle. So knit 1, slip, slip, knit. Knit 2 together, knit 1. So you have to do this, start this one 3 stitches before the end. It gives you a buffer from the end of the needle to do this, to help the gappiness not be so gappy. And it also means if you have any stitch markers up here, they can stay in place and you don't have to worry about moving them around a decrease. Now, after every decrease row, you will have what I like to call a set row. So that was round 1. And now round 2, we just knit everything. And you repeat these. We don't want to decrease too fast. We want a decrease round and a set round. So I'm going to knit all the way around, all 4 needles. Needle 3 is where there was a decrease after the first stitch. So after I move the stitch marker, there's our decrease. We're going to just keep knitting. We're going to set that all in place before we do another round with decreases. And we're going to repeat these 2 rows until needles 3 and 4 have the same number of stitches on them as needles 1 and 2. We're going to be back in balance. So I'll come back in a second and show you one more decrease row, just to cement it more in place. And then I'll meet you at the other end of this when I've done enough decreases that I'm back to the right number of stitches. One more thing before I go back to the next row. Here's my decrease right here. And here's, I just knit straight across it. There's that decrease. There's my kitty. So here I am on my second decrease row. This is needle 2. Remember, we're only decreasing at the beginning of needle 3 and the end of needle 4. So here's the beginning of needle 3, and it's always 1 stitch away from the edge of the needle. So needle 3, I've knit my first stitch, and then I'm going to do a slip, slip, knit. And if we take a look, if I get all this stuff out of the way, it will stack on top of the decrease before it. They will stack if you're doing it right. And then we'll knit down to the end of needle 3. And now we don't decrease at the beginning of needle 4 because we're down at the bottom of the heel. So with needle 4, we're going to knit up until we're 3 stitches from the end. And needle 3 and 4 will get faster to knit as you go because every other round you will decrease. Whoop, helps if you catch the stitch, but you'll be decreasing a stitch every other round. So these rows will start to get a little faster. As I talk my way through getting up to the top here, and the cat head bonks me. Let's get my tail, which decided to go all wibble wobble. He doesn't belong up there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 stitches. If I get down to 3 stitches before the end, I'm going to knit 2 together. I know, kitty. And knit 1 more. Now if we take a look at that, they're lining up, right? So now I'm starting my set round. Remember, we're going to decrease round on only needles 3 and 4. Set it like that. And then knit around all 4, and then knit 1 and 2 and decrease on 3 and 4. I'll come back about halfway through and check in with you. All right, checking in a little over halfway through my decreases. So if we take a look at the top here, needles 1 and 2, still have my 16 and 16. No. And these guys, I'm about to decrease down to 20 on each of them. They need to be, I don't know if you can tell, these are longer. They all need to match before I'm done. So on needle 3, if we take a look at what is happening along the side here, we've got a diagonal line where they all stack on top of each other, making a decrease here. So here's the side where we picked up all those stitches. And here is the decrease line. They're all stacking. Like if I started now, before I do my decrease, just to show you, right here, what's right underneath the needle is a single knit stitch. It's not there's no decreases above my thumb on this row, my thumbnail right there on this row. It's one of the ways to check, am I on a decrease row or am I on a set knit row? If there you can see no visible decreases, it's time to decrease. So let's do that decrease and see what it looks like. Again, knit 1, and then slip, knitwise, slip, knitwise, stitch them together. Try to keep this other guy out of the way. Double points like to be all kind of flibby-flobby. If I finish knitting this needle and we go back and look at that decrease, we can see what it looks like. So when we come back to it on the next row, we can maybe try to recognize how it would be a set row based on the stitches hanging underneath it. So I finished that needle. Let's go back and look at it. If we look at first stitches knit, what is underneath the second stitch on the needle right here is more than one stitch. I see a stitch here and a stitch over here coming together. That right above my thumbnail right there, that is a decrease. So if I was knitting along and saw that, I would know my last row was a decrease and it's time to just knit over it. So here's needle 4. Remember, needle 4 is knit up to the top. We think about this as this is the top of needle 3 down, bottom up to the top on needle 4. The end of needle 4 is where we decrease. So I'm going to knit up to it. Pardon me while I go kind of fast here to get up to it. I always tell people if I'm going too fast in these videos to a part, Pause the video, back it up. Oop, I almost went too fast to go past the part. Last 3 stitches. If I put my thumbnail under the one thing hanging under the stitches on the needle. So stitches on the needle. What's right above my thumb are 3 straight knit stitches. If I move it down one more row, there's a decrease right there, but what's right underneath are straight stitches, which means it's time to decrease above them. And then if we look at what's created, what's right above my left thumb right there, I can see 1, 2, 3. I can see 3 strands all gathering around one loop on my needle. That tells me I just did a decrease right there. So my next row would be a set row. So this is 20 stitches. I need to get down to 16. So I need 4 more stitches to be decreased on this needle and on the other one. So set rows and decrease rows. That means it's multiply that times 2. Love the algebra, right? That means 8 more rows before I'm done with these decreases. So I'll see you once I get that done. Here I am on my last decrease row. I'm up to needle 3. So I can, this is the top of the decrease, so I can knit 1. And Avi's gonna visit me. See, we've got that decrease there, right? So I can slip, slip, knit. That continues that decrease line there. So that's 2 stitches now on my needle. 3, 4. "16 stitches. This now matches needles 1 and 2. Remember, for needle 4, we are at, no, seriously, he's been really annoyed that I've been filming so much today. We're at the bottom of the heel here. So I'm going to knit up on needle 4 to the last 3 stitches. That's only gonna be 14 of these stitches. Already up there. Knit 2 together, knit 1. Now take a look at these 4 needles. They are even. I have a square right now, whereas I did not before. The needle 3 and 4 were longer. So let's see if I can get this away from my kitty. Now it should look more like this one. He wanted to attack us too much. We got him out of here. But let's take a look. There's one side of my gusset. And here's the other side. Look for that triangle in there. On a classic flap, turn, and gusset, you'll have a little triangle right in here. You'll have a straight back, a curved bottom, and a little triangle on both sides. Now, since this is back to the right number of stitches, even number of stitches on every needle, I can just keep knitting in a circle until I'm about 2 inches from where I want the end of my sock to be. And then we can do the toe. And that is a video for another day. So thanks so much for joining us on this looking like it is going to storm Monday. I've got all parts of, if I fold it, get stuff out of the way. I've got all parts of my heel done now. I have the flap across the back. I have the turn of the bottom, and I have the gusset. It's wibble wobble, wibble wobble. The gusset on the sides. We look for that decrease, that little triangle area right in there along the sides. So Rose City Rollers, heel sections. This was part 3. This can work for a lot of classic heels if you want to do the flap, the turn, and the gusset. There are other ways, there are many ways to do a heel on a sock, but that one was for the Rose City Rollers. So thank y'all for watching. Anything you can do will support this channel. Just that you watched this supports the channel. But if you'd like to, you can also subscribe, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. All of that has no financial obligation to you. If you would like to financially support this channel, you can become a member here. You can give us a super thanks. It's kind of like a tip. You also can go over to patreon.com/sundragon, and you can support us with a monthly donation over there. And there's swag attached to that. Over here, I think a high enough membership, there's access to my whiteboards, which are not used in all of my videos. But I hope you have found value in this video and the many others that we've made. And as I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. We'll see you next time. We're going to continue with our sock series. At some point, I will be doing things on Hermione's everyday sock and different parts of Mina's vanilla sock recipe. The heel on Mina's vanilla sock recipe, which is different than this one. It's a German short row heel. She already has a video that goes along with the purchase of her pattern. So I will not be doing that. I may do a video that is on a different version of a short row heel, not the one from her pattern. We got to see what we have time for. We get back to the essentials. May your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. Bye-bye now.